Okay, hey everyone. I'm gonna uh, take this video of me reading this article and explaining a few things so that you can watch it and you can rewatch it in order to understand the article better. Okay? So remember, we're working on paying attention to the text structure of what's called cause and effect, like one thing happens and that affects another thing, etc. Okay? So this one is called When Your Parent is Out of Work. It's by Charlie Locke and illustrations by Francesco Musi. And I also want you to pay attention to this graph. This thing is called a graph, okay? And this is showing information that's going to help us understand the information over here in the text better. So this is showing us the month. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. From December 2018 to about March of 2020, the unemployment rate, that means the people that didn't have jobs, was about the same. And then it starts to go up, and we can see there's information here that tells us about these different points. So for example, February 2020, in the last month of normalcy, before the pandemic, unemployment was the lowest it had been in 50 years, at 3.5%. At that point, the unemployment rate had been trending downwards since it reached 10% in 2009. So it was going down and down and down, and now it's even at the lowest point. You can see that it started here, and now it's even lower than that time. And then it shows April 2020. In April, as the country shut down, unemployment soared to 14.7%, the highest rate since the Great Depression in the 1930s, when it hit nearly 25%. More than 23 million people couldn't find work or had been put on unpaid leave from their jobs. So 23 million people couldn't find work. And that was the highest rate since the 1930s. It's a long time ago, almost 100 years ago. So it was the highest since that time. And now, back in December of 2020, just 2 months ago, it says, as of December, 10.7 million people were unemployed. That's about half as many as in April, but still very high. Almost twice as many Americans didn't have work in December 2020 as in December 2019. So they're saying, yeah, it has gone down, but it's still really high. Because if you look here, what it was like in February to what it was, it's still pretty high. All right, now we're going to read the article. Christoph Noble, 13, used to spend a lot of time with his dad doing chores like raking leaves. But last March, as the coronavirus swept the country, the cleaning business his mom owns lost almost all its clients. To make ends meet, Christoph's dad had to pick up extra shifts at the auto plant where he works. Now, we don't really get to do the father-son bonding time, says Christoph, who's from Southfield, Michigan, because he's at work all the time. So there we found out that it was about Christoph, his mom and his dad, and we found out that his mom lost like almost all her work because she used to have a cleaning business, and the cleaning business she owned lost all the people that used to buy work from her and pay her to do their jobs. So then Christoph's dad, what did he have to do? Because of that, he had to pick up extra shifts. That means extra work at the auto plant where he works. Auto plant's like a place that makes cars, automobiles. And now it says we don't really get to do the father-son bonding time. That means that Christoph and his dad don't get to, bonding time is like when you hang out with your dad, play around, and bonding means like to get closer to each other. Okay, let's keep going here. Millions of Americans lost their jobs in 2020. When the COVID-19 pandemic began last spring, people stayed home. And when business owners didn't make enough money to pay their employees, they let them go. Many people fell behind in rent, and food banks were overwhelmed. Last spring, almost 1 in 5 kids aged 12 or younger wasn't getting enough to eat. Unemployment has gone down considerably since its peak in April. But, as of November, 5.7 million kids across the United States still had a parent who was unemployed. Okay, so that was some details about all the numbers and all the things that have happened because of COVID-19, like how many people are unemployed and how many kids were now having a hard time with eating food and getting enough to eat at home, and how parents are still unemployed even as of November. It can be a big shock for kids when a parent loses a job, says Zach Parolin, who researches inequality at Columbia University, particularly when that's followed with not knowing how they'll pay the rent or put food on the table. So this is saying, like, for a kid, it can be a shock, meaning like it can be upsetting and make you scared and nervous and stressed out if your parent loses a job, because they won't know how to pay their rent, their bills, and their food. Getting enough to eat was one worry facing Trinity Heerigs, 11 years old, this is 11, after her mother was laid off means fired from the job, last March, when the preschool where she worked shut down. Trinity and her mom, who live in Heber Springs, Arkansas, made it through tough weeks with financial support and food baskets from their community. And her mother is now working regularly again. But for Trinity, it has been a stressful time. Anxiety makes it hard to go to sleep, she says. So that's another story about how one family was affected, is Trinity and her mom, because her mom was fired from the daycare that she worked at. And they had a really hard time because they'd have to go and get food baskets from the community. And the mom, thankfully, the mom is working regularly again, but it was a stressful time. And she even said that anxiety, which means like stress, made it hard for her to even go to sleep. It sounds really stressful. Christoph's parents have tried to keep their financial stress private, but he overhears them talk about it during his mom's prayer group and his dad's late-night conversations with friends. It's really hard that I can't help them, he says. This fall, when he made some money raking leaves, his mom started a savings account for him. When I was younger, I used to spend money on anything I could, but now I'm saving it, he says, just in case they need it. Says more about Christoph and his story with his parents and how his parents were trying to keep it private, but like they weren't trying to talk to him about it. But he would hear them talking about it with other people. Like the mom had a prayer group with friends or something, and she would talk about it and he could hear them. And his dad also had late night conversations with friends about it and he could hear it. And he said he felt bad about it. As his mom looks for remote work and waits for her cleaning business to pick up, again, Christoph is trying to keep things in perspective by focusing on his parents' good health. And sharing the experience has made Christoph and his parents open up to one another more. At first, we didn't talk about our emotions or whatnot, he says, but now we do. So that says that his mom's still looking for work, and Christoph is trying to keep things in perspective by focusing on his parents' good health. Oh, he's trying to be appreciative of like, oh, I'm grateful still that, you know what, my parents are actually healthy. And he's sharing the experience has made Christoph and his parents open up. Oh, so they're talking more than they were before about like how they feel and their emotions. Okay. So that's the article. And like I said, we're going to try to pay attention to the text structure of like what were the causes, and the cause being most of this is all the coronavirus. But then there was many, many effects and other types of causes that happened as a result of that affected other things. So this is one way to think about things, is this cause and effect text structure. All right. It was 10 minutes long. I hope it wasn't too long, but I really wanted to give you something so you could go back and rewatch it if you need it. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. See ya.